Palanga 1006 kilometers. Kicking off the oddities from lesser-known racing series is the Palanga circuit. Located in the resort town of Palanga in Lithuania, the circuit traverses the A11 and A13 highways in the country with notable high-speed straightaways. First opened in 2000 as the Baltic 1000, the 1006-kilometer race utilizes the full 2.681-kilometer configuration of the track. Used daily as a public road, the Palanga circuit is especially prepared during race days and then dismantled afterwards, similar to other road circuits like Monaco and the Las Vegas Strip circuit. The track features a long straightaway on the start-finish line with a chicane to break the high speeds before making a left-handed U-turn to the other side of the highway. It then leads to another chicane, followed by a right-hander that's similar to a number 7 figure. After that follows a left-handed U-turn, a short straight, and then a right-handed loop before going to the start-finish line. The race runs for about 373 laps and takes 10 hours to finish. A broad variety of cars take place in the event, including GT, touring cars, special cars, diesel engine ones, and TCR varieties. In 2023, the Statetta Bro team set the record for the quickest race lap in the event's running at 1 minute and 5.425 seconds. The most notable highlight of the track is that refueling takes place at an actual gas station. Macau. One of the most famous racetracks in the world, the Gia circuit in Macau features some odd features that can test a driver's wits and racecraft. A huge variation of altitude that peaks around 100 feet from its lowest and highest point certainly tests the racers who are attending the event. In addition, a thin main straight and the 23-foot wide Melco hairpin presents dire challenges that even has a no overtaking rule imposed due to the danger it poses. Originally intended as a route for a treasure hunt around the city's streets, the Gia circuit subsequently hosted racing events for local race enthusiasts. Since its opening in 1954, the circuit has been regarded as one of the most famous tracks in East Asia. It also features one of the most unique setups, as both cars and motorbikes are scheduled within the same race week whenever its regularly programmed events happen in November of each year. The Gia circuit measures at around 6.12 kilometers and has been a fixture in racing leagues such as Formula 3, GT World Cup, and Superbikes. As it's famous for being tough to navigate, the circuit also has one of the most unfortunate distinctions of claiming lives of those who dare race on it. The first driver casualty on track happened in 1967 when two-time winner Filipino racer Arsenio Laurel skidded on his Lotus 41 and hit a seawall after attempting to avoid hitting spectators. The most recent death on track happened in 2017 when British moto racer Daniel Hegarty flew off his bike and hit the barriers on lap 6 of that year's event. Combining incredible long straights with extremely tight turns, a track like Macau would definitely never be built again. Circuito Potrero de los Funes. Located in San Luis, Argentina, the Circuito Potrero de los Funes has the unique distinction of being built around a lake. That's right, smack dab in the middle of the 6.27-kilometer racetrack is the Lake Potrero de los Funes, which is a reservoir of around 890 acres. And that's not just any lake, no, it's an active volcano. Sounds like a video game, but it's actually real. Another feature of the track is the major elevation changes, as it sits at around 4,000 feet above sea level at the foothills of the Sierra de San Luis mountain range. The track opened in 1978 as it hosted Turismo Carretera and Turismo Nacional races on its confines. However, due to incidents in 1987 that resulted in deaths for 2 spectators, the track was abandoned until its reopening in 2008. Since then, GT1 World Championship, Super TC 2000 and Top Race V6 have held some races at the circuit. Then in 2024, the track was permanently demolished after years of sitting idle. Mallory Park. Opened in 1956 as a hard surface course, Mallory Park is one of the most storied racetracks in England. Located in the village of Kirkby Mallory between Leicester and Hinckley, its original 1-mile oval has since been extended into a circuit that measures at around 1.41 miles, making it one of the shortest in the British Isles during its establishment. Mallory Park also features a big lake near Gerrard's Corner. An extension that makes it resemble a motorcycle side mirror from an aerial view further adds to its oddity. In terms of motor racing, the track has been a prominent venue for motorbikes with the Mallory Park Race of the Year, British Superbike Championship, and Motocross World Championship being some of the most prominent events. In addition, it also features a car circuit with the British Touring Car Championship, British F3, Formula 5000 and Formula 2 holding races there. Autodromo di Pergusa. The Autodromo di Pergusa is located on the scenic Italian island of Sicily. Just like our two recent examples, a unique feature of the Sicilian track is that it encircles a lake. Located within its confines, the Pergusa Lake, which is the only natural lake in the island. Autodromo di Pergusa measured 4.8 kilometers when it first opened in 1951, but has since been extended in 1975 to around 4.95 miles. In 1962, the track started hosting the non-points paying Mediterranean Grand Prix during that year's F1 calendar. It ran until 1998, with its only stoppages being 1966 and 1971. Regarding the layout, one thing that stands out are the hideous chicanes. Added to scrub up speed, they tend to send cars flying and harm the flow of the track. However, they definitely turned the Autodromo di Pergusa into something worth the title weird racetrack. Avus. The Avus track, located in Germany's capital city Berlin, only hosted one Grand Prix in 1959. However, its layout remains one of the weirdest Formula 1 had ever seen. The track only features 4 corners, a tight hairpin as turn 1, 2 fast kinks as turn 2 and 4, and another hairpin connecting the two. That second hairpin is famously known for having a banking of 43.6 degrees. Thanks to simulation games, we know that modern F1 cars would still need around 1.5 minutes around this track. Why, you may ask? Because the straights are almost 4 kilometers long each. Even if Formula 1 only visited this one kind of a racetrack just once in its history, the track held racing events until 1998. Due to safety concerns, they got rid of the banking in 1967, and chicanes were added in the last years of its existence. The track lengths were also reduced during the 1990s. Tony Brooks, who won the F1 event in 1959, set an average speed of 230 km per hour, just 20 km per hour short of Verstappen's record set in this year's Italian Grand Prix. Nordschleife. We stay in Germany for our next entry on the list, the infamous Nordschleife. Nicknamed the Green Hell by Jackie Stewart, this circuit located in the German Eifel region is probably one of the best known racetracks in the world. While nowadays GT3 cars take turns in tackling the hardest racetrack in history, Formula 1 hosted several Grand Prix until the 1970s. During the early years of Formula 1, safety features were non-existent. Most racetracks in Europe were either aircraft runways or street circuits. The Nordschleife was different, as this track is completely man-made, handcrafted into nature in one of Germany's most beautiful landscapes. The version we know today is still 20.8 kilometers long, slightly shorter than the version F1 actually raced on from 1951 until 1976. Niki Lauda's fiery crash then proof that the circuit is not suitable for F1 anymore. With several crests, tight turns, bumpy surface, and a high possibility of fog and changing weather conditions, the Nordschleife remains as one of the craziest tracks F1 ever raced on. Pescara. Now, if you thought the Nordschleife was long with around 21 kilometers, wait till you hear about the Pescara. This 25.8 kilometer long racetrack hosted only a single Grand Prix in the 1957 season. Located around the city of Pescara, the track only consisted of local streets. Starting with a more technical part connecting a few villages, the second half of the lap only consists of never-ending straights, one 90-degree corner and a chicane before the pit entry finishes off the lap. Sir Stirling Moss won the Grand Prix consisting of 18 laps or 465 kilometers in total. During that race, Jack Brabham ran out of fuel but pitted at a local gas station next to the track. The Pescara circuit held its last event just a few years later in 1961. Baku City Circuit. Weird racetracks are almost only a thing of the past, even though circuits like Valencia or Singapore could be classified as unusual. The only track on the 2025 F1 calendar that truly baffles me is Baku. Consisting of long straights for most parts, Baku is the complete opposite of a typical street track. Cars run low downforce setups and drivers actually have the space to go 2 or even 3 wide through most parts of the track. But then there is an infamous castle section, a tight slow part next to the old castle of Baku with zero room for error. This part of the track also bends F1's rulebook as it's too tight for the regulations. The weirdness of the Baku City Circuit is also highlighted in the most memorable races. 2017, 2018 and 2021 saw a lot of drama and exciting racing, while many other ventures to Azerbaijan's capital brought us absolute snooze fest. In 2025, Baku left us speechless with the longest qualifying ever, recording 6 red flags after crashes from various drivers, including championship leader Oscar Piastri. Monza. Another track still in use today is Monza, but while the layout is slightly unusual, this is not the point in this video. From 1955 until 1961, Formula 1 ran a different layout around the Temple of Speed on 4 different occasions. This layout connected both the normal Monza layout we know today, just without the chicanes as they were added later, and the oval with a steep baking. The start-finish straight was split into 2 lanes via cones to make this possible. After completing a lap around the classic layout, cars stayed to the inside after the parabolica turn and turned into the oval just a few hundred meters before the modern turn 1. From there, they followed the oval and crossed the track with the bridge that's located on the second DRS straight just in front of the Ascari chicane. After exiting the oval, the cars are back on the left track of the circuit. This configuration is truly special and deserves a place on the list of F1's weirdest tracks ever. Indianapolis. Most of you probably know that F1 raced here, but we're not talking about the track that was used during the 2000s. In the first 11 years of the championship, the Indianapolis 500, yes, the IndyCar event, was actually part of the Formula 1 race calendar. However, the crossover between the series was minimal. No driver who scored points in the Indy 500 went on to score a point in a traditional F1 Grand Prix. Two-time F1 champion Alberto Ascari is one of the few F1 drivers who took part in the event, with most European drivers electing to skip the race entirely. This piece of F1 history leaves Indianapolis as the only oval racetrack that was ever part of F1's calendar. Caesars Palace. In 2023, Formula 1 finally returned to Las Vegas. Even though the track kinda looks like a lig on its back, the circuit is way better than F1's first stint here. In 1981 and 1982, Formula 1 hosted the Las Vegas Grand Prix on the Caesars Palace Grand Prix circuit, which was nothing else than a glorified parking lot. The track was literally built in the parking facilities of the Caesars Palace Hotel and Casino, giving the track its name. The layout was horrendous, a completely flat track with a total of 14 turns. Apart from the 90 degrees turn 14 and the left kinks of 11, 12 and 13, the track only consisted of hairpins or hairpin-like slow-speed turns. The heat of the Nevada desert added to the awful atmosphere that this place created. Even though it hosted the season finale on both occasions, the only things fans remember about Caesars Palace is how awful it was. Dallas. We stay in the USA for our next entry on the list, the Dallas Street Circuit, only part of the F1 calendar in 1984, is another failed attempt to bring F1 to America in the 1980s. Even though the track was quite fast for a street circuit at the time, there's almost nothing positive to say about it. The Can-Am race the day before tore up the track's surface. Repaving didn't work, leading to several problems on race day. Many drivers crashed out, including Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna. Only 8 drivers were classified, including Nigel Mansell, who collapsed while trying to push his Lotus over the line on the last lap. While the layout looks okay for an old street track, the track felt lifeless and had nothing to offer. It has a weird mix of sharp, slow corners and was hated by the drivers for the bumpy surface. And with the asphalt breaking under the heat, this track really is one of the weirdest of them all. Zeltweg. Back to a track with one of the strangest layouts of all time. Located just 2 kilometers away from Spielberg, Zeltweg hosted the first 2 Austrian Grand Prix in Formula 1 history. However, the first race in 1963 didn't count towards the championship, so speaking from official statistics, Zeltweg just hosted 1 Grand Prix in 1964. The track consists of just 4 corners, showing many similarities to the Avers circuit at the beginning of the video. Like it was done many times back in the day, the circuit was built on an old military airfield, just like Silverstone. Officially, F1 never returned due to the bumpy surface, but I'm pretty sure the layout also played a big part in the decision. Bahrain Oval. During the 2020 season, F1 was in desperate needs to fill their calendar due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Multiple circuits therefore got to host more than one race, with Bahrain being one of them. Since racing on the same track over and over again is not the most entertaining thing ever, the officials had an idea. What if we use another layout for the second event, the Sakhir Grand Prix? Since the longer endurance layout used in the 2010 Bahrain Grand Prix was neither a driver nor a fan favourite, the much shorter, almost oval-like version of the circuit was used. On this layout, the entire infield of the Manama circuit gets skipped. Instead, cars turn left after turn 4, went through the fast kink of turn 7 before entering a slower chicane. A full throttle bend then brings the cars back onto the last sector of the Grand Prix layout. This version is only 3.5 kilometers long, so the race went over a distance of 87 laps. The lap times were under a minute, with Valtteri Bottas qualifying on pole with a record-breaking 0:53.377 seconds. The race itself became a classic, with Sergio Perez taking his first ever Grand Prix win. The layout, however, never returned. Spa 1994. I guess you wouldn't expect to hear Spa-Francorchamps on this list, did you? However, during the 1994 season, F1 made a few strange modifications at 4 different tracks, following the dark weekend of Imola, where both Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna lost their lives. The weirdest change came at Belgium, where Formula 1 decided to put a chicane into the Eau Rouge Raidillon complex, turning the most iconic corner in F1 into a slow, boring uphill section. Thankfully, the change was reverted for 1995, as safety improvements elsewhere brought the necessary changes. Roskilde Ring. Stirling Moss called this the strangest racetrack he'd ever raced on, the same Stirling Moss who raced at Pescara and Avus. Roskilde Ring is located in Denmark. The track is literally built into a gravel pit, leading to a natural banking from the outside corners. F1 raced here in 1961 and 1962, but none of these races counted towards the championship. The original layout was only 600 meters long. After the addition of another loop, the track length grew to 1.4 kilometers or 0.87 miles. This is way shorter than all usual F1 tracks, and looking at the layout, you can see that the track features no real straight. Sir Stirling Moss won the event in 1961, while the second F1 race in 1962 was won by 3-time Formula 1 champion Jack Brabham. What I find hilarious, according to Wikipedia, Lucien Bianchi, great uncle of Jules Bianchi, withdrew because he had no car. I guess it was because his car was damaged, but I love the image of him arriving at the track and realising he travelled there without a race car. And that concludes the list of the weirdest F1 tracks ever. Pocono Raceway. Located in Blakesley, Pennsylvania, Pocono Raceway is perhaps one of the most mainstream oddities in North American racing. Shaped like a scalene triangle, the tri-oval breaks the norm for its uneven distance straightaways and a pointed triangular layout that's a far cry from the cookie cutter and normal oval track configurations. For context, its dimensions include a 3,740-foot main straightaway, a 3,055-foot backstretch, and a 1,780-foot straight between turns 2 and 3. The track has distinct banking in each of its 3 turns, 14 degrees in turn 1, 8 degrees in turn 2, and 6 degrees in turn 3. The 2.5-mile racetrack was actually inaugurated in 1966 when IndyCar's predecessor, the United States Auto Club, or USAC, held a 300-mile event in Pocono. In long separate stints from 1971 to 1989 and 2013 to 2019, Pocono was an IndyCar staple. Big accidents like the one that paralysed Robert Wickens in 2018 led to safety concerns. That led to a sad end to one of the most iconic ovals in modern IndyCar history. Downtown Nashville. More popularly known as the Music City Grand Prix, IndyCar first graced the streets of Nashville, Tennessee in 2021. Traversing across the Korean War Veterans Memorial Bridge, the 2.17-mile track featured a golf club-shaped layout from an aerial view with 2 long straightaways and a box-like loop. As a result, the Grand Prix became the first major American race to include a long river crossing bridge. Aside from the iconic bridge, the street circuit also runs adjacent to Nissan Stadium, the home of the NFL's Tennessee Titans. In its first edition, former F1 driver Marcus Ericsson took the victory in the event, even after his car went airborne after hitting Sébastien Bourdais during the early stages. In addition, Ericsson and Grosjean shared that the track has similarities to the Baku City Circuit, which hosts the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. The race was held in downtown Nashville area until 2023, before it was moved to Nashville Superspeedway the following year. Sanair Superspeedway. In one of the more hilariously named racetracks across the globe, IndyCar had sparing appearances at Sanair Superspeedway. Why was it hilarious, you might ask? Well, Sanair, air quotes, super speedway, measures at a measly 0.826 miles. That's right, the isosceles-looking tri-oval barely measures a mile but carries the name super speedway. Located in southwest Quebec, Canada, IndyCar first visited Sanair in 1984 and lasted only until 1986 due to its odd location and unexciting races. One noteworthy incident from the track, however, happened during the inaugural race when Rick Mears suffered serious leg injuries when he crashed on the main stretch. Ironically enough, the track that replaced Sanair on the calendar was Nazareth Speedway, which was previously tackled on our Weirdest NASCAR Tracks video. Downtown San Jose. During the Champ Car era, the streets of San Jose, California, hosted races with a very basic layout. Containing just 7 corners, the 1.443 street circuit featured several straightaways that traverse through Almaden Boulevard and South Market Street. While the location is quite odd, it goes a notch further as cars race through a chicane on the straightaways that cross train tracks. You heard that correctly. Due to the little elevation of the tracks, cars were bunny hopping on the circuit. Despite the oddity and challenges though, racing icon Sébastien Bourdais came away with 2 out of the possible 3 race victories that were run in the area before it was axed for the 2008 season. Streets and Airport of St. Petersburg. One of the most highly anticipated events on the IndyCar calendar is the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg for its half-street, half-airport configuration. Located in the Tampa Bay area, the races on the track feature high-quality racing given its well-planned layout and the inclusion of the runway of the nearby Albert Whitted Airport. Measured at a distance of 1.8 miles, the 100-lap race was first featured as a kart event back in 2003, before its rebranding as an IndyCar fixture in 2005. Its main attraction, the runway 725 of the airport, has been one of the longest-standing aviation fixtures in a major American race, even outlasting the likes of the Burke Lakefront Airport, which was included on the Grand Prix of Cleveland, and the eastern runway of the Edmonton City Centre Airport in Canada. For its exhilarating atmosphere, the street and airport of St. Pete has been the curtain raiser for the IndyCar calendar, or the first race of the series annually on home soil since it was included in 2005. NOLA Motorsports Park. In a one-off, IndyCar visited the New Orleans Motorsports Park in 2015. Originally built as a club circuit, the track hosted the series, which immediately turned into a sour situation. The race was bombarded with rain as qualifying was cancelled, and the majority of the race was run under the yellow flag. Due to this, the attendance for the event only amounted to around 10,000, and it was then reported that the promoter and track officials were involved in legal disputes after the race's conclusion. Originally scheduled to run until 2017 on a 3-year deal, the succeeding races were cancelled, and IndyCar never came back to the venue. For what it's worth, James Hinchcliffe won the rain-shortened race on the 2.74-mile track just a few weeks before he suffered serious and life-threatening injuries in a horrific accident in Indianapolis. Brands Hatch. One of the most historic and revered tracks in England that even predates Silverstone, Brands Hatch first played host to a USAC-sanctioned race way back in 1978. However, we would focus more on its most recent trip across the pond when CART held the London Champ Car Trophy on the track in 2003. An interesting note about the track's inclusion was that it ran its Indy layout for the event, which measured just around 1.192 miles, deviating from its massive 3.916 mile configuration. Unfortunately, IndyCar still hasn't returned to the venue ever since the establishment of the specific layout. In addition to this, CART and the Champ Car Series actually held several races in Europe in tracks such as Zolder in Belgium and Lausitz in Germany, the latter being the place wherein the unfortunate crash of Alex Zanardi occurred during the 2001 American Memorial race in the circuit. Due to the gravity of the accident, both of Zanardi's legs had to be amputated, and he needed so many blood transfusions that he actually joked about it later and claimed to be at least 50% German now. Emerson Fittipaldi Speedway. Located in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the Emerson Fittipaldi Speedway is situated within the grounds of the Autodromo Internacional Nelson Piquet. The race's unique feature owes itself to the fact that it's a D-shaped speedway that shares its grounds with a road course, being one of the few hybrid racing tracks that IndyCar visited. It also became the first event held by CART in South America when it ran races from 1996 to 2000. In its inaugural edition, Brazilian driver André Ribeiro took the race victory on the Rio 400 edition of the event. In 1999, the race was renamed to the Rio 200, with Juan Pablo Montoya winning in his rookie season. Due to the aforementioned D shape, the track felt like neither an oval nor a regular racetrack. Turns 1 and 4 were heavy braking zones, while turn 2 and 3 are fast kinks taken on the edge of full throttle. Sao Paulo Street Circuit. A shout-out should also be given to the succeeding Sao Paulo race that IndyCar ran from 2010 to 2013 that emanated from the streets of the city. Sao Paulo Santana District played host to the first ever championship race since the rebrand and held historical significance as it's the birthplace of F1 and racing legend Ayrton Senna. Will Power won the first 3 editions of the Sao Paulo event, while James Hinchcliffe drove to victory lane in its last iteration. Grand Prix of Houston. Originally, kart ran races in downtown Houston from 1998 to 2001. The track ran parallel to the George R. Brown Convention Center that featured a heavily quadrilateral layout which resembled 2 rectangles connected on top of the other. Then, after a 4-year hiatus, the series came back, but this time, the track ran adjacent to NRG Park in what resembled that of the Music City Grand Prix in Nashville and F1's Miami Grand Prix that ran next to an NFL venue. The 1.683-mile track featured long straightaways and a right-handed parabolica that was won by Sebastian Bourdais in 2006 and 2007. After that, it wouldn't be until 2013 when the series now known as IndyCar made its return to the track, utilising the second configuration. 4 races were held across 2 years, with 4 different drivers taking the checkered flag. Since 2015, however, IndyCar has yet to make a return to the once odd track. When asked about the worst tracks in history, many fans actually named the streets of Houston. Meadowlands Grand Prix. From 1984 up until 1991, IndyCar ran races in the Meadowlands Sports Complex in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Both layouts used during the time were heavily criticised by fans. The first race started out on a 15-turn, 1.6-mile long temporary road course in the parking lot around the Giant Stadium. Drivers hated the narrow nature of the track, and the racing around there was just awful. The semi-oval, which was introduced in 1988 to improve competition, was around 1.2 miles long and featured 6 corners. However, the streets around the Brendan Byrne Arena were still narrow, and the event never became profitable for the promoters. The races were often crash-filled due to the concrete walls surrounding the track. One of the only memorable moments came in 1990 when Arie Luyendyk missed turn 1 and veered off into the escape road. To rejoin the race, he needed to take an exit ramp into the Giant Stadium parking lot just to turn around. Caesars Palace. Gaining infamy as one of the worst tracks that Formula One has ever raced on, the parking lot of Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, Nevada, hosted 4 editions of the titular Grand Prix. The first 2 years were occupied by F1, while the 1983 and 84 races were sanctioned by CART. One big difference between the 2 sporting bodies, however, is the type of layout that they utilised. While F1 used the heavily criticised 2.26-mile layout that featured boring turns and straightaways, CART used an outer loop, which was an uneven hexagon that featured 6 corners and long straightaways that measured around 1.125 miles for 178 laps. Still situated in the middle of Las Vegas, the first kart race was won by legend Mario Andretti on his Penske Lola Cosworth, while the final race in the venue and of the 1984 season was claimed by fellow American Motorsports Hall of Famer Tom Snever on a March Cosworth by Meyer Motor Racing. As the track was still situated in a literal parking lot in the middle of the desert, the event was deemed too boring and top-level racing left Caesars Palace for good. Daytona Beach Road Course.
Here come the only performers at Daytona Beach, faster than the stock car.
There's no better place to begin than with the spiritual home of NASCAR. Before the storied Daytona 500, the then strictly stock series, which eventually became the present-day Cup Series, raced at Daytona Beach, utilizing both Florida Highway A1A and the sandy beachfront that effectively made it the first hybrid track that the series has raced on. After the season opener in Charlotte, the inaugural edition of the beach and road course race occurred on July 28, 1949. During the event, Red Byron claimed the victory in his Oldsmobile and eventually that year's championship. With hotels and establishments rapidly expanding to the beachfront, NASCAR founder Bill France Sr. concocted a plan to establish a permanent racetrack based in the area that eventually became the Daytona International Speedway. As for the beach and road course, the last race would be held in 1958, as in the following year, the flagship Daytona 500 would take place in the new speedway. Langhorne Speedway. One of the biggest jokes and misnomers about NASCAR is that the drivers always drive in circles. While that's inaccurate, as several of its tracks are shaped like ovals and some are road courses, Langhorne Speedway gives credence to the claim. Opened in 1926, the speedway, located in the northern suburbs of Philadelphia, once featured a circular layout. That's right, no sharp turns nor indicated braking zones were included in the track's layout, as it resembled the shape of a perfectly circular ball. NASCAR first raced in the 1-mile dirt circle track in 1949, with Curtis Turner having claimed the victory on an Oldsmobile. The Top Flight Series, then known as the Grand National Series, would come back to the speedway and hold its races until 1957. Unfortunately, the track also features some of the highest fatality rates, as it claimed the lives of 18 drivers, 5 moto riders, 3 spectators and 1 flagman, including 1950 NASCAR National Modified Champion Wally Burns, who perished in the inaugural Langhorne National Open. In 1965, the dirt track was paved and was reconfigured in what resembles a D shape and was used until its closure in 1971. Islip Speedway. Located on the south shore of Long Island, New York, Islip Speedway isn't your ordinary speedway. Regarded as the first track to host a demolition derby in 1958, the speedway has a grand distance of 0.2 miles or 0.32 kilometers. That's right, Islip is the shortest speedway to ever host a NASCAR Cup event, then known as the Grand National Series, way back in 1964. The governing body originally scheduled the events to run for 250 laps, with an exception during the final race in 1971. That year, the King Richard Petty won the curtain closer at the track after just 230 laps due to an error that shortened the race from running its full course. Islip would continue to host demolition derbies, boasting its figure 8 configuration before its closure in 1984. LA Memorial Coliseum. Now we're cheating a bit here, but the Cup Series recently held its Busch Clash at the LA Memorial Coliseum starting in 2022. Although not a points-paying race, the Clash has been the preamble before the Daytona 500 race and has been identified as an exhibition race. Joey Logano took the victory in the inaugural event, while Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin won the succeeding editions of the event. Originally intended to honor the veterans of World War I, the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum was also built as the city of Los Angeles made a bid to host the 2024 Summer Olympics. Unfortunately, the bid was defeated by the city of Paris in France for the Olympiads hosting. Nevertheless, the Coliseum hosted the 1932 Games and is slated to become the first to have hosted the Olympics thrice when the 2028 rolls around. Unfortunately, the quarter-mile track would have to wait before being added back to the calendar due to the Clash being relocated back to Daytona in 2025. McCormick Field. While races held in tiny spaces aren't a new thing in NASCAR, as it has races in the minuscule Islip Speedway and has even ran its events in football fields such as the LA Memorial Coliseum, one peculiar place will live down the annals of the sport's long history. In 1956, it held its inaugural race at the McCormick Field Raceway in North Carolina. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the Speedway, it was built on the warning tracks of a baseball field. That's right, what used to be the home of the Asheville Tourists and the third oldest field in minor league baseball history was for a brief time converted into a racetrack. The move was done by the owner of the track after the town lost its minor league team. The track measured at a tiny 0.25 miles or 0.4 kilometers, encircling the field's home plate and stretched to the warning track. One memorable event occurred when legend Lee Petty crashed, sending his car into the first base dugout. Fortunately for Asheville, the minor league team would return in 1959, effectively ending NASCAR's stint in the track. Linden Airport. While it's true that NASCAR had raced in venues that were purposefully built for other sports, one of the most unusual settings that the Cup Series has ever run its race was in an airport. While some might recall that IndyCar used to run the Grand Prix of Cleveland at the confines of Burke Lakefront Airport, NASCAR has done it way back in the 1950s, when it did a one-time race at Linden Airport in New Jersey. Built during World War II by General Motors for military aircraft, Linden Airport was the place wherein the famous Hellcat fighter aircraft was produced and developed. In 1954, NASCAR's Grand National Series held a one-off race at the airfield in a road course configuration with a distance of 2 miles. Hall of Famer Buck Baker took pole in the event, while Al Keller won the 50-lap race featuring names such as Joe Eubanks, Herb Thomas and Lee Petty. Chicago Street Course. Originally a conceptual track for iRacing that was made for the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational in 2021, the Chicago Street Course came to fruition in 2023 when the Cup Series held its event in the streets of Chicago and became the first street race in its history. The 2.14-mile race traversed through some of Chicago's famous landmarks, including Soldier Field, Grant Park and Buckingham Fountain. In the 3-year running of the event, road course and supercars legend Shane Van Gisbergen claimed 2 victories in 2023 and 2025, with Alex Bowman winning the rain-shortened version in 2024. Interestingly enough, the Cup Series actually raced in Soldier Field when it was still known as the Grand National Series in a one-off in 1956 that was won by Hall of Famer Fireball Roberts after 200 laps. The football ground would further host racing events until 1970, when the new iteration of Soldier Field was built. Memphis, Arkansas Speedway. One might ask why a track that smack dab in the border of 2 states is included on the list with very little remarkable features. Well, due to its features that will soon be adapted to modern NASCAR tracks, the Memphis, Arkansas Speedway can be classified as a track that was way ahead of its era. Opened in 1954, the 1.5-mile dirt track was and still is the longest dirt oval track that NASCAR has ever raced in its long history. Another feature of the track was its high banking, which was cited by father-son Hall of Fame duo Lee and Richard Petty. The speedway can be found near West Memphis, Arkansas, just west of the city of Memphis in Tennessee. Hall of Famer Junior Johnson claimed pole in the inaugural event in the track's first year, while fellow Hall of Famer Buck Baker took the win. While it's been a regular fixture in the calendar until 1957, the track was running on fumes in terms of funds, as the dirt was reportedly difficult to manage and a repavement option would cost even further. Due to the owner's struggles, the track was closed and was sold in the aforementioned year. Nazareth Speedway. Nazareth Speedway in Pennsylvania traces its roots as a horse racing track way back in the 1850s. It officially became a motor speedway in 1910, mainly as a dirt track. It wasn't until the 1980s, however, that the track would transcend into the NASCAR calendar after Roger Penske purchased a huge chunk of the property in 1986 and was instrumental in paving the outer track. Since then, the track for a time has been a fixture in the Busch Series, now Xfinity Series, and the Truck Series. Its main feature is its sharp turn 1, making the speedway having unorthodox dimensions from conventional ovals. Father and son racing icons Mario and Michael Andretti have been linked with Nazareth as they were locals in the area and established their early racing careers there. NASCAR, kart and IndyCar would race in the speedway until the mid-2000s, before the International Speedway Corporation took over and closed it in 2004. Thunder Special Japan. Yes, you read that correctly. NASCAR once held its races in the racing-crazed nation of Japan from 1996 to 1998. Dubbed as the Thunder Special, the non-points paying races emanated from the land of the rising sun and was held twice at the famous Suzuka circuit in the first 2 years before moving to the twin ring Motegi in its final year. As many fans know, Suzuka has been revered as one of the best racetracks in the world due to its balance of speed and turns. In 1996, Rusty Wallace came away with the victory in his Penske Ford in a field composed of NASCAR drivers combined with Japanese and Australian racers, as the racing body utilised the east portion of the race for its event. The following year, Mike Skinner took the victory in his Richard Childress Chevrolet after 125 laps. If that sounds like a very long race for you, I mean F1 only races 53 laps around here. I need to mention that NASCAR only used the shortened version of the figure-8 shaped racetrack. After the S's, the cars turned sharp right onto the start-finish straight. This is the same layout that was featured in the official F1 games from 2017 to 2020. Göteborg City Race. Opened in 2008, the Göteborg City Race was an annual event that traversed the roads of a port. You heard that right. Located next to the Gotha Alf, the track was established on the docklands known as the Frihamnsspiren. The 1.65-kilometre track played host to the Swedish Touring Car Championship and Porsche Carrera Cup Scandinavia throughout its existence. One of the most challenging parts of the track was the almost 90-degree turns that the drivers had to face as several tight chicanes were placed. Although it was primarily utilised as a concert venue, the opening race of the STCC, that drew 40,000 spectators, signified that there's demands for the events. Races were held at the Göteborg circuit until 2014, when it was closed and reverted to a concert venue. Seeing racing cars inside a harbour felt like something out of Need for Speed, but the layout was not up to modern standards, with no real excitement for drivers or fans. Birmingham Super Prix. One of the most ambitious and unique races in the history of British motorsports was the Birmingham Super Prix. Founded in 1986 and held within the confines south of Birmingham city centre, the track made history by being one of the few street events held in the country. Flowing at an unorthodox counter-clockwise format, the 3.974-kilometre track laid out on public roads south of Birmingham city centre. The start-finish ran along Bristol Street, A38, with pits based at the Bristol Street Motors Ford dealership and nearby multi-storey car park. From there, the circuit crossed the Ring Road and wound through the Belgrave interchange, using parts of its roundabouts and slip roads, including the tight Hayden Circus hairpin with a distinctive hump underbraking. The layout then turned toward the city via Sherlock Street, Pershaw Street and Bromsgrove Street, featuring narrow urban sections and heavy braking zones. The lap ended by crossing a narrow bridge and rejoining Bristol Street, forming a fast yet technically demanding street circuit, remembered for its complexity and close confines. The International Formula 3000, British Touring Car Championship and Thundersport Series held their races on the circuit during its short stint. Due to safety hazards and its high operating costs, the last races were held at the venue in 1990. Ring. Another track that was only used for a short amount of time, the Ring was located in the industrial area of Singen in Baden-Württemberg, Germany. Opened in 1991, the 2.8-kilometre track features several perfectly right-angled turns, which made it difficult for drivers to establish speed while exiting turns in spite of its many straightaways. It's laid out on wide 4-lane town roads, and its simple angular layout and street course character made it one of the most unique tracks ever made. DTM ran races during the venue's 5-year stint with German F3, Porsche Carrera Cup Germany and Austria Formula 3 Cup, also making stops at Ring before it was closed in 1995. Jinkai Street Circuit. Founded in 2006, the Jinkai Street Circuit, also known as the Beijing International Street Circuit, was a 2.231-kilometre track that ran through the Jinkai Exhibition Center in Beijing, China's suburbs. For a track that was designed by the great Hermann Tilke, the street circuit was really a sight for sore eyes, not only for the A1 GP drivers that raced in it, but also those who were able to watch it. It featured very narrow straightaways and hairpins, which isn't out of the ordinary with street races, but the sheer lack of action and a weirdly placed chicane made for a very boring race. The track was even shortened in the following edition in 2006, after Turn 8 featured a very tight hairpin that proved too tight for the cars to traverse. As a band-aid fix, the straightaway leading to Turn 8 was shortened a few yards, but still posed risks as it almost touched the pit entry barriers upon the turn's exit. A1 GP held just 2 races at the Jinkai Street Circuit before it was dropped in 2007. XL London. Originally opened in 2015, it wasn't until the 2020-2021 season that the Exhibition Centre, aka XL London, would appear on the Formula E calendar. The XL London track replaced what used to be Battersea Park Street Circuit that was used for the London E-Prix for the 2019-2020 season, before being cancelled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The track is located through and around the Convention Centre and the Royal Victoria Dock, which bears similarity to the mixed-use Home Depot Centre in Carson, California, that used to host the X Games moto races. What makes the track really unique is that compared to normal race tracks around public places, a lot of the circuit is actually indoors. The track features a variety of turns, long straightaways and hairpins that measure around 2.14 kilometres. Formula E featured a lot of really weird racetracks, but I think the London circuit deserves a spot at number 1. Now, if you enjoyed this video, you may also want to watch this one next. See you soon.